Oh, hello. For these chapters, we are going to be discussing about sleep, in particular the drugs that are used for sleepy disorder. I hope you don't fall asleep for this chapter. These notes here are pretty comprehensive and concise for your understanding. But beforehand, I want to briefly tell you how to use these notes. So I'm going to give you an overview pictures about sleep. Okay? So just follow me. Sleep, when we are sleeping, we are usually cycling through two different phases called the REM sleep, R for rapid, so two different phases of sleep. We are usually cycling through either REM or non-REM. They are different. REM refer to rapid eye movement. Okay. This phase here is very useful, especially if you're a student. You want to get as many REM as possible. Generally, to reach REMs, it takes about 90 minutes of cycling back and forth. Anything less than that, like in narcolepsy, when you fall asleep, that's about 10 minutes latency. So there are people who just fall asleep suddenly at any times of the day, and then they'll wake up. Those are abnormal sleeping patterns. This condition is called narcolepsy. Anyhow, REM sleep is very important as a student because it has to do with consolidation of memory. So, the question is, if you have a choice to pick sleep over staying all night long to study for tomorrow tests, which one would you pick? The answer, although obvious, but is not an easy choice as a student. Try to sleep as much as you can. REM sleep is very special. Your eyes are moving very fast. But REM sleep is special because you remember. You remember. That means you would have dreams. These dreams could be lovely or not. And if you do wake up while you are REMing or remember, it turns into nightmares. So people in REM sleeps, the brain is active. Active brain. That's all it is. The body is paralyzed. Muscle. So there are almost no muscle activities. They have a paralyzed body. The only thing that is active is the brain. That's REM sleep. Non-REM sleep, however, is the opposite. The body is active. Very active. So, you have conditions, if you heard of it, like night terrors, where people are sleeping actually sleeping with their arms swinging back and forth and screaming, but they are sleeping. They are in non-REM sleep, with the letter N, non-REM sleep. How about sleepwalking? That's a physical activity, right? And they are sleeping. They don't know what happened. They are sleeping. So these people is in non-REM sleep. Okay? Non-REM sleep is divided into stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, as an average person in general, we want to stay around 3 and 4. But we don't. We mostly stays around 2. Stage 2 is where we hang around the most of our sleep cycle. Why we want to go to 3 and 4? The reason is at 3 and 4, you have hormones produced to repair your body. You have immune boosted. And at this stage, if you're able to complete up to 3 and 4, your sleep is very restful. So if you don't complete stage 3 and 4, you will wake up feeling like you've been hit like a truck. Okay? 3 and 4 is called the delta sleep because there's the wave. Delta is the letter D, and there's the wave called delta wave. So this is delta wave. Goes up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Delta wave are very high. Go up, 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 up. Like that. Back and forth, back and forth. Delta wave. Okay, so typically we cycle from 1, 2, 3, 4, and I told you these are called non-REM sleep. So we start with the body being active, because in non-REM sleep, physically we are active, and our brain is actually relaxing, not waking up. Then we end up in REM. So our body become inactive and our brain become active. So it goes like that. Active, so you will have an active body. When you hit REM, you will have an inactive body. At non-REM, you have an inactive brain. When you hit REM, you become more active brain. You see? So by knowing this pattern, you can differentiate at what stages of sleep you're at from any sleep due to any sleeping disorder or of your sleeping disorder. Okay? Now, sleep depends on the physiology and the physical structure of your brain. The glands inside or different parts of the brain. But they all are regulated by hormones or neurotransmitter, if you want to call it. So, let me show you Mr. Sandman. Who knows Mr. Sandman? Mr. Sandman, show me your dreams. Okay, let's go through this. So S for serotonin. Serotonin is what gives you initiator of sleep. Initiator of sleep. So to initiate the sleeping process, usually the body or will require a higher serotonin circulating. A is actually acetylcholine, And that's the hormone or neurotransmitter of which nervous system? If you say parasympathetic, then you are correct. And like I say, parasympathetic has to do with sleep. So, the more acetylcholine you have, the more you can become more sleepy. Now, N is actually norepinephrine. These hormones are produced by what autonomic nervous system branch? Norepinephrine. If you say sympathetic or adrenal, then you are correct. So guess what? High circulating norepinephrine, which is sympathetic, that means you cannot fall asleep, right? Like stress. If you have stress, you produce catecholamine. One of them is norepinephrine circulating through your system. Then you can fall asleep. Cannot sleep. D of Mr. Sandman, D, there's dopamine. D stands for dopamine. If serotonin is initiator of sleep, then dopamine is arousal of sleep. I mean that your body is, or your brain is constantly being stimulated or aroused. Dopamine, like epinephrine and norepinephrine, those are sympathetic, right? Dopamine, being a stimulant or sympathetic, arouse sleep. So now you also cannot fall asleep. Or if you are sleeping, you have high dopamine first thing in the morning. That's what the body naturally produces. It would wake you up. Okay. M is melatonin. Melatonin can be found in supplements also, and there are drugs called remetilen. Well, they actually set the mood of sleep. They don't make you fall asleep, put you to sleep. They just give you a nice, peaceful type of environment, like in the mood for sleep. And melatonin is produced and regulated in your brain in the gland called pineal gland. Okay? And melatonin is related to your circadian or sleep cycle. And that has to do with light and darkness. Okay? So, Mr. Sandman include S for serotonin, A for acetylcholine, N for norepinephrine, D for dopamine, M for melatonin, and I am telling you this because we can make drugs that targeted this type of pathway. Say you want to set the environment or in the mood for sleeping, you can have a little melatonin and a cup of warm milk to increase your serotonin. So you're in the mood for sleep, and then you can initiate sleep. And you make sure at least half an hour before or more to stay away from arousing sympathetic stimulant like dopamine type from watching TV or playing with your smart device. That way, you can enter into the world of sleeping. And if you are super relaxed, by stimulating your parasympathetic to release more acetylcholine, then you become more sleepy. So there are different strategies. Questions. Do we really want to treat sleep or sleep disorder? That's what I meant. The question is, if you answer yes for some of you, then I challenge you. Sleep disorder, or simply or generally classified as insomnia. Do we really want to treat it? The straightforward answer is no. Why? Because it could be a problem due to a conditions or leading to a conditions. Or perhaps it's just a symptom of a greater disease process. So generally, we don't want to treat insomnia or sleep disorder. We want to find out what's going on. Okay, so with this basic and general or overview, let us go into the lectures right now. Okay, so have a look at this chart right here. This is an EEG recording of stages of the sleep. This one right here. That's what the facility would do when you stay overnight for a sleep study. They will hook up electrodes on your brain and you kind of go to sleep and measure your brain wave. EEG recording would typically show different spikes or not. So when you are awake, when you are fully awake, it's almost like flat line. Your graph will show flat line with tiny little spikes here and there. In contrast, when you are in deep sleep, which is usually stage 4, is also like a straight line, but there are massive spikes. So awake and stage 4 sleep almost look alike, but there are strong intensity of the mountain hills and valley. So now you know the difference when you look at this EEG recording. We call this awake activity alpha and beta. Alpha activity is meditative. Beta activity is awakening. Delta activity, with this large, intense, strong spikes found only in stage 4. Delta activity, that's deep sleep. D for delta. You also see some delta activity in stage 3 because stage 3 and 4 are quite close to each other. But you see complete delta activity in stage 4. So when you combine 3 and 4, that at this stage called the deep sleep, that is at this sleep is where you are restful. Your sleep is completed, restful. That at this stage is where you produce hormones to repair your body and boost up your immune system. So people not getting restful sleep probably never reach 3 and forget about 4, and they always wake up tired. And you see this a lot for elderly populations. And what is the reason? There are many theories. Some say it's probably due to a combination of deteriorating or poor brain functions and hormonal imbalance of serotonin versus dopamine. Continue on to the story of the EEG. So from awake, we will enter into stage 1. We have an activity called theta activity. And from stage 1, we enter stage 2. We will have what we call spindles and K complex. K complex is sudden spike. So you see this random sudden spike, those are K complex. Those will be in stage 2 sleep. Why am I telling you all this? I'm giving you the context of sleeping. Do you need to know this at this stage of your education? No, this is FYI, for your information. We spend most of our time trying to fall asleep, and this stage that we spend most of the time it's stage 2. Okay, so as we cycle from awake to 1, 2, 3, and 4, because 1, 2, 3, 4, that's your non-REM sleep. You're still physically active, although your brain is slowly shutting down. We're trying to reach REM sleep before we get out and continue back to non-REM and then go back down to REM. So it's like a cycle. REM sleep is where you want to go, especially as a student. Okay, there are drugs that can affect these sleep stages or cycle. 2 of the most famous one that I want to talk about is the benzodiazepine, and the other drug class is the barbiturates. Which is more dangerous? Looking at this graph I'm showing you right now, where the y-axis is the CNS effect versus the x-axis, which is the increasing dose of this drug class, benzo versus barbiturates. Which of them do you think is more dangerous? Okay. If you say benzodiazepine, then you might want to look at the graph again. If you say barbiturates, then you are correct. Okay. So, looking at this graph, barbiturates actually, sorry about this. Okay. Let's continue. Okay, let's look at this graph together. Both benzodiazepines is also called benzo. barbiturates, sometimes we call short form for BARB. Both of these drugs would give you a sedation mode, sedative mode, and they are also hypnotic, both of them. Sometimes we use these concepts to induce a sense of sleepiness. Because people can fall asleep, so they would take some benzodiazepines just to make themselves kind of tired and fall asleep. Generally, we don't want to treat sleep, I remind you, because there could be a problem or a symptom. But if you need to, then you need to. Benzodiazepines started slowly with the sedative mode. Following this graph, this is the CNS side, this is the increasing the amount dose. At the low dose, both benzodiazepines and barbiturates are sedative and they are anti-anxiety. Anxiolysis, which means they don't make you anxious, distress you, and they're sedative at very low dose. And as you progress the dose a bit more, they become hypnosis. So you basically go from a sedative mode to a hypnotic stage. And as you continue on, you will see it become anesthesia, both benzo, but especially barbiturates. At this dose, most likely, the barbiturates would give you the anesthesia effect, meaning you have loss of sensations of pain. Because most likely at this stage, benzodiazepine would plateau. And that's why benzo is not a good anesthesia drugs or medication. Unlike barbiturates, which never plateau. It went from anesthesia, and if you keep increasing the dose, you will depress your medulla. In your medulla is your respiratory center. A part of it will control respirations. And so barbiturates would depress your medulla and give you a problem with breathing. So high dosage of barbiturates, that's one of the adverse effects. You keep taking barbiturates, then you end up being comatose or coma. That means you won't be able to wake up. I want to show you something. Barbiturates is quite similar to alcohol. Alcohol actually is a drug. Just like barbiturates, at low dose of alcohol is very sedating. As you increase the consumption a bit more, you become hypnotic. But if you overdose on alcohol, you can pass out. So the question is, you pass out first and stop taking alcohol, or you just completely pass out due to the effect of it, which is which. So they are up there and they are very dangerous. I'll show you these diagrams right here, going back to the sleep cycle. We discussed it already, but at stage 1 sleep and REM sleep. Stage 1 sleep is where it's starting to enter into the stages of 1, 2, 3, 4. The stage 1 EEG reading is quite similar to REM. To REM sleep. Why is that? Because from REM sleep, we enter into stage 1. So the EEG readings are quite similar. Okay, 3 and 4 are also similar. But 2 is where we spend most of our time. That's what this diagram is trying to show you. And also we did talk about delta sleep being a deep, restful sleep repair mode. Okay. I have questions for you. If you are playing iPad or watching TV before sleeping, which hormones are activated? Well, you are arousing yourself with the letter A, and is adrenergic. So if you say sympathetic, which is what you are, and the hormone is actually dopamine, because looking at S, A, and D, M, these are the hormones that we need to know for sleep. So dopamine is high with iPad and TV. Elderly lose the non-REM stages. We call this delta. What stages would this be? If you say 3 and 4, then you are correct. Barbiturates affects sleep cycle of what stages? First, I give you a hint. It affects the non-REM. Did you remember that? Non-REM is your body is physically active, and if I were to perform a surgery, I don't want you to be moving your body all around, hitting me while I'm cutting you. So it would go to your non-REM, in particular your deep sleep, so stages 3 and 4. Night terrors, a lot of physical movement. Is this a REM or non-REM disorder? Night terrors, a lot of physical. So if you say non-REM, you are correct. How about somnambulism? Somnambulism means sleepwalking. And it's physical, so there will be non-REM again, non-REM disorder. How about urination? That means urination while sleeping. Is this a physical activity or a brain activity? Now that is up for debate. Nightmares, is this a physical activity or a brain activity? Nightmares are brain activity, so this will be a REM disorder. Okay. So drug related to sleep, we use benzos. We don't use barbiturates, but we understand it will give you sedation and hypnotic sensation at low dose. But because benzo has other undesirable side effects when treating sleep disorder, we create what we call non-benzo medication. They are easy to tolerate, they are really fast, and then don't disturb your sleep cycle. And they act like benzo, just with not so much of all the adverse effect of benzo. So we call them non-benzo or benzo lookalike. These drugs usually has the letter Z. Z for sleeping. When you're sleeping, you are Z, Z, Z. And they are zolpidem, Zaleponde, Izopiclone with the letter Z. So if you see any Z and you see on the vignette or the questions, they're talking about sleep drugs. Benzodiazepines are not recommended for elderly because as it is elderly, populations have slower brain and nerve activity. So when you prescribe benzodiazepine, you cause excessive sleepiness and they might fall down and hurt themselves. So if you really want to give them a sleep medication, we give them the non-benzo type. Alcohol, benzo, and barbiturates. Alcohol is similar to barbiturates in the functions. They, as well as increasing norepinephrine due to your adrenal, they all would reduce your REM and your stage 3 and 4, which is your deep sleep. This is why you don't feel fresh after taking sleeping pill or drinking alcohol or having stress, which is to do with norepi. Alcohol and benzo can cause respiratory depressions because alcohol acts like benzo. It doesn't plateau off. Increasing consumption or dose of alcohol acts similar to barbiturates, and they can affect and depress your medulla, which contain your respiratory center. Melatonin supplement produce sensation of sleepiness, but this is not related to sleep. They are made in the pineal glands as well as in your retina. Why? Because they have to do with light and darkness. Primary insomnia refers to difficulty falling or staying asleep, or non-restorative sleep for at least 3 nights a week for 3 months. The best treatments for any sleeping disorder is practice good sleeping hygiene, cognitive behavior therapy is usually employed, CBT, as the first line of treatment. And finally, the last choice would be drugs. Drugs is always the last choice. Okay, I'd like to tell you a story. We have previously discovered and discussed the cross relationship of barbiturates and benzodiazepines. Their actions on our bodies or the resulting actions are quite similar, with barbiturates more deadly in high dosage, as you already saw this graph. Okay? Well, the mechanism of action for both are somewhat similar. This is why they can be used to a certain extent for similar actions. Let me tell you what's going on. Beforehand, let's understand what is chloride ions. Chloride ions is negative. Okay, so this type of ions is actually would cause a situation called depolarization. That means it's negative, not positive. So when your cells is resting, it's usually at the negative. Cells need to be activated and bring up to a level where it's more positive than where it was resting in order to be turned on. But you having more and more negative, and the cells when it's resting is negative, and you put in more negative, which is chloride is negative, you're making it hyperpolarization. So it's very difficult to be turned on, as illustrated by this graph. This is just a typical action potential graph where we measure the electrical activity of communication between cells. This is how it works. A cell is resting, it's called a resting membrane potential, is minus 70. It has to be climbing up to minus 55 once at 55, it can be turned on. So this part here is called depolarizations. Okay, after it reaches its peak of plus 30, it loses its energy, then it come back down again. So this part coming back down is called repolarization. That's been recharging itself. And you can see it went from positive 30 millivolt all the way back down to minus 55. It's becoming more and more negative. Now, if you added in more chloride ion, which is negative, it sends the cells to below the resting potential. Where this is the resting potential. It went below it. So when it went below it, it's really hard for it to be activated again. It will take a lot of positive ions to be turned on. Okay? Because ion is either positively charged or negatively charged. Positively charged ions are your sodium chloride. Chloride is minus, sodium, potassium. You see those plus or Ca plus, those are your positive. Okay? Now, let's remember this chloride ions making it more and more hyperpolarizations and apply to these pictures. Okay. Let's understand one more concept. In our central nervous system, we have a lot of receptors for GABA, especially the brain. And GABA actually is an inhibitory neurotransmitter or hormones. I mean, it slows things down. So when GABA is released from the pre-neurons, presynaptic cell or pre-neuron cells, it's coming out. It's coming out and finally is received by the synapses or neurons. These are the receptors. GABA will be received here. This circle right here, that's GABA. So GABA will interact with these receptors and it will open up a channel. This channel. When these channels are opened up, chloride ion will flow through it. Because this channel is designed for chloride ion. GABA only attracts chloride to flow through this channel. Chloride, Cl minus. And you know this inhibitory. So that's how it works. So how does barbiturates or benzodiazepine play a role in this? Well, this is what happened. Let me explain. Okay. Say this green circle here, that's your barbiturate, barbi, okay? So when barbi bind to the receptors of GABA, and in the brain, the GABA receptors is GABA A, because we have A, B, and C. They kind of tells you the location, but in the brain is GABA A, okay? It binds to it. When barbiturate binds to it, it kept the channel that was open longer. Kind of like 7-Eleven open 24 hours, 365 days. So when the channels is open longer, more chloride can come in. That's how barbiturate interacts with this. That's at low dose only. At high dose of barbiturate, when you give to the patient, it don't even need GABA to open the channel. It opened by itself. At high dose of barbiturate, the channel just open. It stays open and more chloride goes in. Now you know why high dosage of barbiturate is dangerous. Patient can be comatose and you can depress or press down your medullary. That's your brainstem. The brainstem has a lot of activity. One of them is breathing, okay? Your respiration system center is at the medulla. That's at high dose. How is benzodiazepine interact with this then? Well, benzodiazepine quite similar. If barbiturates keep the chloride channels open longer, increase in duration. Benzo actually increase in the frequency of opening. So when benzo interacts with the GABA A receptors, once it is open, it just keep making it open over and over and over again. So benzo increase the frequency of chloride channels opening. Okay, like this one here. Barbiturate at lower dose keep the channel open longer. So that's their relationship. And if you take a lot of benzo, all it do in comparison to barbiturate is it just plateau, flatten out. That's why benzo is still safer than barbiturates. At lower dose, barbiturates and benzo behave the same as anesthesia, hypnotic agent, sedative medication, anti-anxiety, even anti-convulsant, that means anti-seizure, muscle relaxing activity. Oops. Okay. Sometimes you can identify the drugs barbiturates by the suffix. It has the word barbital, butabarbital, methotrexate. This one is thiopental. Thiopental is barbiturate. They refer to it the same in the States and Canada. And I believe you use it a lot too for anesthesia, thiopental. For animals, in the veterinarian like to use it. So if you see thiopental, those are barbiturates. And so this is a story that I want to tell you, the similar relationship in the mechanism of action for barbiturates and benzodiazepine.